I've heard people say that when something breaks in a marriage, it doesn't happen all at once. That the signs are there, just quiet, subtle. So easy to overlook that by the time you recognize them, you're already standing in the rubble. But in my case, it didn't start with suspicion. It started with proof. It was a Thursday night, nothing special. Laura was already asleep upstairs, and I was at the kitchen table, half drained from the week, going through our bank account. A couple times a month, I do a quick run-through of charges. Just something I picked up from my dad, who always said, trust your gut, but verify your receipts. Never thought much of it, honestly. But this time, something stopped me. A $482 charge from Haven Bay Resort. I stared at the name, blinking. Haven Bay? That's a high-end beachfront hotel about an hour and a half south. Not the kind of place you just pass through. Not exactly a Holiday Inn for a budget work trip either. The date on the charge. March 14th. I remembered that day because it was the night Laura said she had to work late. Some last-minute team strategy meeting. She called me around 7:30 that evening. Said not to wait up. Said it might run long and she'd probably stay over at the office to catch some sleep before a big morning pitch. I didn't question it. Why would I? We'd been married 7 years. I trusted her. But now I was sitting at our kitchen table, staring at a transaction that said otherwise. I closed the banking app, reopened it. Same thing. Haven Bay Resort. Room charges, spa service, dining. All billed to the same card we both used. And here's what really hit me. If it were for work, wouldn't the company have paid? Or reimbursed? Why would it be on our joint card? My mind started racing. Was there some conference she forgot to mention? A vendor meeting? Something she just overlooked? I told myself not to spiral. Not to jump to conclusions. I could just ask her in the morning. But something gnawed at me. Something small but sharp. So I went out to the garage. Her car was parked exactly where it always was. I opened the driver's side door, half hoping I was just being ridiculous. The first thing I noticed was the sand on the floor mat. Fine, white, unmistakable. Not from a park or hiking trail. Beach sand. I reached down, brushed some of it off with my fingers, heart thudding harder than it should have been. I leaned into the driver's seat and inhaled. There was something else. A scent. Not Laura's perfume. She always wore floral tones, light, citrusy. This was heavier, muskier. Not strong, but definitely present. It didn't belong. I opened the glove box. It was cluttered, napkins, an old pair of sunglasses, a phone charger half wrapped around a travel-size Advil bottle. And then I saw it, a plastic wristband. White, waterproof, the kind you get at hotel pools or spas. It had printed text, Haven Bay Spa, and someone, likely the receptionist, had scribbled initials on it in black marker. L.T. Laura Thomas. I sat in the driver's seat for a long time with that band in my hand. It felt ridiculous, like I was making too much of something, but everything in me was screaming that I wasn't. I walked back inside, placed the wristband in the junk drawer, and didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, she came downstairs like she always did. Wrapped in a robe, hair damp from the shower, sipping her coffee while scrolling her emails on her phone. I watched her, wondering if anything about her would feel different. Didn't. She smiled when she saw me and kissed the top of my head. I waited until she sat down before casually bringing it up. Hey, quick thing. I saw a charge from Haven Bay Resort on the card. Was that you? She didn't flinch. Didn't blink. Oh yeah, she said easily, like I'd asked about groceries. It was that team offsite I told you about. Remember? The late night? She glanced at her phone again. They put us up for one night down there. Last-minute booking. Client insisted we host at a resort for the full experience. She kept talking, cool as ever. It was one of those immersive team-building things. Yoga, client workshops, presentations. Kind of a joke, honestly, but I couldn't really say no. I nodded slowly, watching her face. She didn't sound nervous. Her voice was calm, steady. She looked tired, like she'd been through a long week. But she didn't look guilty. That's why you came home late? I asked. She gave a small laugh. Didn't I text you that night? I thought I told you I was staying. Sorry, I was wiped. I must have crashed without checking in again. It all fit too well. Her explanation was so perfectly wrapped up, it felt like she'd practiced it. And then, as if on cue, she walked over to her work bag, pulled out a tri-folded pamphlet with the Haven Bay logo on the front. This was the agenda, she said, handing it to me. It was supposed to be a brand alignment exercise. Half the people were on their phones the whole time. Waste of a beach trip, honestly. I took the paper. It looked real. It was real. But something inside me wouldn't settle. That weekend, she brought home my favorite coffee without me asking. Made breakfast Sunday morning. Left a little note by the sink. Just because I love you. And still, I couldn't shake the feeling. That wristband, the sand, the cologne. Her calm, her smooth story, the way she had the pamphlet ready like she'd predicted I'd ask. I couldn't call her a liar. I had no actual proof. And yet, I didn't believe her. Not fully. Not anymore. Something had changed. And maybe it had changed long before this. Maybe this was just the first time I caught up. I wanted to be wrong. I hoped I was being paranoid. But that night, when she kissed me longer than usual and pulled me close like we were still 25 and untouched by life's sharp corners, I didn't feel warmth. I felt cold. Once the seed was planted, it didn't go away. I told myself I was overthinking, that I was tired, that maybe I'd gotten too deep into my own head. But doubt, once it finds a crack, expands like water freezing in stone. Quietly, relentlessly. The funny thing is, nothing explosive happened after the Haven Bay discovery. No fights, no accusations. Just this slow shift in the way I saw things. Like someone had taken my life and turned the contrast up just a little. The things I used to overlook started standing out, begging for inspection. Her phone, for one. Laura had always been casual with her phone. Left it on the table, unlocked, sometimes even asked me to reply to texts for her if she was busy. But not anymore. Suddenly, it was always face down. Screen never lit up in plain view. And when it did, she'd glance quickly, swipe it away, and smile like nothing happened. I noticed her texting more, brief, quiet conversations that made her smirk or bite her lip, but she never volunteered who it was. Then there was her laptop. One night, I sat down at the desk in the study intending to use her computer for something simple. Printing a form, I think. I entered the password we'd always shared, the one that had been the same since we bought the thing. Wrong. I tried again, more slowly this time. Still wrong. When I asked her about it later, she didn't miss a beat. Oh, I changed the password last week. IT said we had to update for security. I'll text it to you. She never did. I didn't push. I was still in that phase where you half suspect something but don't want to say it out loud, because once you do, it becomes real. So instead, I started paying attention. She started going for early runs before work. Laura's never been a runner. She used to joke that running was what you did if you were being chased. Now, suddenly, she was setting alarms for 5:30 a.m. and coming back just after 7 o'clock, claiming she'd done a 5-mile loop. In full makeup, no sweat, hair barely out of place. The first time I saw it, I laughed. Did you run or Uber around the block? She smirked. Excuse me for not looking like a swamp creature when I exercise. But it wasn't just that. Her gym bag started living in the trunk of her car. Her phone was always with her, even in the shower. She'd hum to herself while getting dressed, texting someone with a tiny grin like she had a secret. I started keeping my own little mental notes, like some sad amateur detective. A timeline of explanations. There was the weekend she said she was going to her sister's place upstate, but I checked her location on Find My iPhone, something we both used to do when coordinating pickups. She was still in the city the whole time. When I asked how the visit went, she paused too long before answering. Oh, it was fine. We didn't do much. Just stayed in and talked. Another weekend she claimed she was going to a branding summit for her agency. I asked where it was being held. She said a hotel downtown. I looked it up later. There was no summit scheduled. Not even a conference room booking under her agency's name. And then there was the sweater. That one really stuck with me. It was lying across the back seat of her car, gray, oversized, clearly a man's. Not mine. Not her brother's. Not something she could easily claim was from a client shoot either, though that's exactly what she tried. Oh, that's Oliver's. He left it in my car after the commercial set last week. But I'd met Oliver. He was built like a twig. This sweater looked like it belonged to someone bigger, broader, someone more her type, if I'm being honest. Still, I said nothing. Not out loud. I told myself, maybe it was Oliver's. Maybe the branding summit was real but under a different name. Maybe the runs were legit. Maybe she'd found a new skincare routine that let her glow at 6 a.m. without a bead of sweat. But doubt has a way of compiling like interest. The more you let it sit, the more it grows. There were gift bags in the trunk, nice ones, boutique style, tissue paper folded just right. She said they were for clients. I peeked inside once. There were no business cards, no pamphlets, no branding. Just candles, chocolates, and little love notes that didn't look mass-printed. One even said, "You deserve this weekend." Who was that for? She started being too attentive. Not in a genuine way. In a way that felt studied. She made dinner on weeknights, which used to be my job. She'd surprise me with wine, rub my shoulders out of nowhere, leave post-its on my coffee mug that said, "You're my favorite person." Sounds sweet. It would have been months earlier. But something about the timing made it feel rehearsed. Like she was playing a role. The good wife act. Just convincing enough that I couldn't point to anything specific. But I could feel it. Her smile was wider. Her voice softer. Her affection came in waves. Almost too perfectly timed with the days she'd work late or come home with sand on her boots. And her eyes. They never matched the rest of her. That's what got me the most. Her eyes had always been expressive, one of the things I loved most about her. But lately they felt guarded, like there was a second conversation happening behind them, one I wasn't invited to. I remember one night we were watching a movie, some mindless rom-com she picked. She leaned her head on my shoulder and let out this tiny sigh, the kind that used to mean contentment. But her body felt stiff against mine. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. When I turned to look at her, she quickly kissed me, as if to redirect the moment. And in that instant, something inside me shifted. I realized I was no longer living with Laura. I was living next to her. She was there, physically but emotionally, she was somewhere else. Every laugh sounded like a sound check. Every compliment like a cue card. She was playing the role of the woman I married, but the real version. She was drifting, further every day. And yet, despite all of this, I said nothing. I didn't bring up the password change. I didn't ask about the summit. I didn't confront her about the sweater, the wristband, the sand, or the perfume. I just kept collecting moments, fragments of truth, like puzzle pieces from a picture I already knew would hurt to complete. What I was doing wasn't smart. It wasn't even healthy, but it was all I could do, because saying it out loud, asking the question I was now almost certain I knew the answer to, meant breaking the illusion completely. And part of me wasn't ready. Not yet. I kept hoping I was wrong. But hope is a funny thing. When it's built on silence, it becomes denial. And denial, I was beginning to realize, is the most dangerous comfort there is. It happened the way big things usually do, quietly. No shouting. No dramatic discovery. Just a moment so mundane it could have slipped past me. But it didn't. That night, Laura said she had a team dinner at a new bistro uptown. She kissed me before leaving, dressed casually but just a little too polished. Curled hair. That perfume she never wore around me anymore. The one that smelled expensive and distant. I stayed home. Ordered Chinese. Started a documentary I didn't really want to watch. I wasn't pacing or checking her location or planning to go through her things. I wasn't even trying to prove anything anymore. I had started living in that strange in-between space, where you know the truth but can't say it aloud because you still live with it. Share a bed with it. Make dinner with it. But fate, or maybe something crueler, gave me an opening. Around 10:45 p.m. I passed the home office and noticed her laptop glowing. She must have left it open when she left. The screensaver hadn't kicked in yet. Just a single window open. A cloud backup in progress. A few folders visible. Nothing looked suspicious at first. I don't know what made me sit down. Maybe I was tired of pretending not to see. Maybe I needed to stop lying to myself. Or maybe, deep down, I wanted to be wrong one last time. There was a folder labeled Q4 Campaign. I recognized the name. It matched a pitch she'd mentioned in passing, something about a lifestyle client she'd been managing. I clicked it. Inside were a bunch of image files. Thumbnails loaded slowly. Most looked like ad mockups, mood boards, product sh*ts. Normal agency stuff. But near the bottom were 3 files just labeled by date. One of them matched March 14th. I clicked it. The image opened in full resolution, large, crisp, unforgiving. It was a photo of a hotel room. Beige tones. Ocean view behind parted curtains. Laura was sitting on the edge of the bed. Hair wrapped in a towel. Robe cinched at the waist. Holding a champagne flute and looking out toward the balcony. It wasn't scandalous, not overtly. If you didn't know better, you could mistake it for a candid vacation sh*t. Something a couple might laugh over later. But my stomach dropped. In the mirror behind her, just barely in frame, was the reflection of a man. Shirtless. Leaning forward. His face was blurred from motion, but the body language said enough. He wasn't room service. I stared at it, not blinking. Time slowed. My hands started to sweat. There was no caption, no context, nothing to dress it up. Just an ordinary, perfect moment preserved like a fly in amber. I closed the photo. My breath was shallow, like someone had put a hand over my mouth. I went back into the folder. Checked the metadata. The photo was taken at 11:38 p.m. on March 14th, less than 4 hours after she texted me from the office, saying she was wrapping up a long client dinner and might crash at her desk. There was another file, this one a **t. A reservation email. 2 guests. Haven Bay Resort. Room 603. King bed. Spa package included. Same night. Then there was the 3rd image. A breakfast receipt, scanned as a PDF. 2 entrees. 2 drinks. 9:12 a.m. Checkout time. That was the morning she'd come home just before 10 o'clock. Still smelling like eucalyptus lotion. Claiming she'd showered at the office gym. I remembered that morning vividly now. She made me pancakes. Told me she missed me. Asked if I wanted to plan a weekend getaway. I remember looking at her and thinking how relaxed she seemed. Now I knew why. There was another folder. Tucked away under a project name I didn't recognize. Inside were messages. They weren't labeled Owen or Love or Personal. Just meeting notes. But the contents had nothing to do with work. Short, casual texts. Full of inside jokes, emojis, late-night hellos, and midday check-ins. They weren't explicit. In fact, that's what made them so damning. The familiarity. The shorthand. The way she didn't say much but said everything in the way she typed his name. Oh, always just oh. I recognized the tone. It was the way we used to talk. When we were new. When we had nothing to hide and everything to say. I scrolled up, checking dates. They lined up with her early runs. With her late meetings. With her out-of-town weekends. The conversations weren't torrid, but they were full of affection, suggestion, warmth, trust. The last message, just 2 days ago. Owen. Same time next weekend? I can't stop thinking about that morning. And her reply, Laura. Yes, I'll find a reason. That was it. No denial left. No alternate version of reality where I could squint and make it fit the version of Laura I still hoped existed. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a drunken one-off. It was real, ongoing, coordinated, an affair. I sat back in the chair, not moving. My arms felt heavy. My mouth was dry. I looked around the room like it belonged to someone else. The walls, the framed photos, the candle she kept on the shelf. All of it suddenly felt staged, like I'd been living on a movie set. What surprised me most was the lack of rage. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. There wasn't a burst of betrayal or a dramatic moment of collapse. What I felt was clarity. For the first time in weeks, maybe months. My mind went quiet. All the mental gymnastics, the rehearsed excuses, the internal bargaining just stopped. Because I had my answer. There was no more guessing. No more maybe. I sat there for almost an hour, just breathing, staring at nothing. When Laura came home later that night, she was smiling. Hair in a bun, takeout in hand. She leaned down to kiss me. I kissed her back. Not because I forgave her, because I needed time to figure out what came next, to decide how this story would end. And when people imagine betrayal, they picture chaos. Yelling, doors slamming, accusations hurled like grenades. But what comes after discovery isn't chaos. It's quiet. That kind of quiet that sits in your chest like a weight. After finding those photos, I didn't confront her. I didn't even let on that I'd seen anything. When she walked through the door that night, carrying Thai food and humming under her breath, I played my part. Smiled. Ate dinner. Asked about her day. I let her talk about her client dinner and how work was exhausting. Every word sounded like it had been rehearsed, but I nodded anyway. Because now I wasn't her husband anymore. Not in the way I had been. I was her observer. Her archivist. That night, while she showered, I went back to the laptop. I transferred everything to a flash drive. The photos, the receipts, the messages. Then I took *TS of her recent texts to Owen. Not just the incriminating ones, but the small ones too. The ones that said, "Hope your day's going well," or "Still thinking about yesterday." They were almost tender, and that tenderness was what cut deepest. The next day, I opened a new bank account. Quietly. One she didn't have access to. I redirected my direct deposits there. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about control. About making sure when the ground finally broke, I wasn't standing on the wrong side of it. From there, it became a project. My project. I started collecting data. Every time she said she was going somewhere, I noted the time, the location, the excuse. When she said she was running in the mornings, I used the car's odometer to track mileage. It never changed. I started using the shared iCloud account we'd set up years ago to check her location history. She must have forgotten it still synced. Every client meeting she mentioned happened within the same radius. Downtown, near Haven Bay, or a cafe called Tide and Bean. Owen must have been local. Once, while she was in the shower, I found a small parking stub in her coat pocket Seaview garage. I looked it up. It was right next to the resort. Same date as one of the photos. The pattern became clear fast. The affair wasn't spontaneous. It was scheduled. Routine. I started saving everything. Not to confront her with it, not yet, but to make it undeniable. I created folders, labeled by week. Inside were *TS, receipts, notes on her stories, even her changing perfume brands. I knew which shoes she wore when she lied, which earrings meant she was seeing him that night. The strange, the things you start noticing when love dies but the habit of watching doesn't. There was one weekend she said she was visiting her sister again. She packed a small overnight bag and left right after breakfast. As soon as she pulled out of the driveway, I followed. I wasn't proud of it, but I needed the truth to hurt enough that I could finally walk away. She didn't leave the city. She drove downtown, parked in that same garage, and walked into the lobby of Haven Bay, alone. 10 minutes later, Owen arrived. I saw him for the first time then. Taller than me, clean-cut, confident in the way of men who don't have to lie to get what they want. They greeted each other like a habit. Quick glance, quiet smile, that familiarity that only comes from repetition. They disappeared inside. I didn't follow. I didn't take pictures. I didn't need to. I'd already seen enough. Instead, I drove back home and sat on the porch, staring at the empty driveway. The air was heavy, the kind that makes everything sound distant. I didn't cry. I didn't even feel anger anymore. Just a dull ache. Like realizing the house you built together had termites and every wall you touch now crumbles in your hand. That evening, when she came home, she looked radiant. Sun-kissed, freshly showered, smiling. She told me her sister was thinking about moving, that she'd helped her pack a few boxes. I nodded, pretending to listen, pretending to believe. But something had shifted. I wasn't waiting for her to slip up anymore. I wasn't chasing truth. I already had it. Now I was planning my exit. Every lie she told became another piece of leverage. I collected them not out of spite, but precision. Like an engineer building the perfect structure, only this one was an escape hatch. I started taking small steps, moving documents from the shared office drawer to my car, backing up tax forms, updating my work address. I told friends small half-truths, laying the groundwork for questions that would eventually need answers. All the while, I acted normal. Dinners, small talk, Sunday grocery trips. She probably thought I'd softened, that I was happy again. And in a way, I was not happy exactly, but clear. There's a strange kind of calm that comes when you stop trying to fix something that's already broken. It's like the moment before a storm. Still, charged, inevitable. A few weeks later, she mentioned another business trip. 3 days this time, out of state. I smiled and told her to have fun. The morning she left, I placed an AirTag in her luggage. By noon, the location popped up, Haven Bay Resort, same as before. That night, while she was there, I sat in our kitchen and finally allowed myself to picture what life would look like after. The quiet mornings, the space, the peace of not pretending anymore. When she returned 2 days later, she hugged me longer than usual, like she was trying to erase whatever she'd done. She brought me a small souvenir, a keychain shaped like a seashell. I accepted it with a smile, thanked her, and slipped it into my pocket. Later that night, when she went to bed, I dropped it into the trash. By then, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't going to shout. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to ask her to explain why or how or when. Those answers didn't matter anymore. What mattered was leaving cleanly, quietly, on my terms, because she had spent months rehearsing her lies, perfecting her calm. And now it was my turn. I was going to perfect my silence. There's a moment, just before something ends, when everything seems too perfect, too polished. It's like the world knows a curtain is about to fall, so it shines the stage lights a little brighter, just to make sure you remember the scene. That moment came at Laura's annual company party. She'd been talking about it for weeks. A big networking event, she called it. Fancy venue, open bar, live music. The kind of evening where everyone showed up dressed like their careers depended on it. I told her I'd come. She hesitated, then smiled, a bit too brightly, and said she was glad I was making the effort. That's how she phrased it, like my presence was a favor, not a right. The day of the party, she spent hours getting ready. Hair curled just so. Makeup softer than usual, more deliberate. She wore a dark emerald dress I hadn't seen before. Low in the back, fitted, elegant. Not inappropriate, not flashy, but meant to be noticed. And her perfume, it wasn't the one I bought her last Christmas. It was the one I found a receipt for months ago. Tucked into a bag she said was for client gifts. I stood in the doorway watching her put in her earrings. "You look nice," I said. She turned, smiled. "Thanks. You clean up pretty well yourself." The ride to the venue was quiet. Music played softly. She scrolled through her phone, laughing at a message. I didn't ask who it was. I didn't need to. The event was held at an upscale downtown hotel. Rooftop venue. Fairy lights. Soft jazz. Everything perfectly curated to feel effortless. We walked in together, her arm lightly looped through mine. From the outside, we looked like every other couple there. Successful, composed, comfortable. But inside, I felt like I was carrying a secret too big for my skin. Laura worked the room like a pro. She introduced me to people whose names I immediately forgot, smiling the way you do when everyone is watching. For the first half hour, I stayed close. We laughed, sipped champagne, took a photo in front of the step and repeat banner. Then something shifted. She started drifting, talking to people alone, forming small circles I wasn't invited into. I saw her speaking to a group near the bar, her hand on someone's shoulder, laughing just a little too freely. I wandered over, meaning to casually rejoin her. That's when it happened. She turned to me, mid-conversation, and said, "Oh, everyone, this is Chris, an old family friend." Chris. Not Sam. Not her husband. Just Chris. It took everything in me not to blink. The people she was talking to, 2 women, 1 man, smiled politely, offered quick hellos, then moved on. She didn't even look at me after. She just picked up her drink and continued talking like nothing had happened. I stood there, stunned, waiting for her to correct herself. She didn't. Eventually, I excused myself and walked toward the outer edge of the rooftop. The city lights below looked distant and blurry, like something I'd once dreamed about living in. I stood with my hands in my pockets, letting the cold air bite at my face. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I was done. This wasn't a slip of the tongue. This wasn't a social gaffe. This was strategy. She didn't want her colleagues to associate me with her. Maybe Owen was there. Maybe she told everyone she was separated. Maybe I was just an inconvenience now, a shadow she was trying to step out of. I turned to look back toward the crowd. That's when I saw him. Owen. He was standing across the rooftop near the bar, dressed in a navy blazer, laughing with one of the junior creatives Laura had mentioned before. She had never described him directly, but I recognized him immediately. He had that quiet, self-assured look, sharp jawline, the kind of guy who wore confidence like cologne. He didn't look nervous, didn't look guilty, just present, like he belonged there. Then I saw Laura walk toward him. It wasn't dramatic. No hugging, no lingering touches. But there was something unmistakable in the way they acknowledged each other. The pause in their step, the tilt of their heads, the private gravity that pulled them just slightly inward when they talked. Like they shared something only they knew. At one point, she touched his arm. Just for a second. But it was enough. They didn't kiss. Didn't hold hands. But they didn't need to. When 2 people are connected, it shows in how they listen, how they smile, how they forget the rest of the world is watching. I stood there and watched my wife fall in love with someone else in real time. And the worst part? She didn't even flinch. She didn't glance over her shoulder. Didn't check if I was watching. Because she knew I wouldn't cause a scene. She knew me well enough to trust I'd swallow the moment like every other one. That was her final act. Not the affair. Not the lies. Not the endless gaslighting about work trips and client calls. Her final act was erasing me, publicly, reducing me to a background extra in her curated life. I didn't finish the night. I didn't say goodbye. I slipped out quietly, walked past the valet, and started down the street. It was cold and the wind cut through my jacket, but I didn't care. I needed the night to sting. I ended up at a bar a few blocks away. Ordered 1 drink. Didn't touch it. I just sat there in a corner booth, staring at the condensation on the glass, wondering how I got here, how someone could love you once, then decide you were better erased. I thought about the night we got engaged, how she cried when I proposed on that same rooftop 3 years ago. She wore a navy dress, the same skyline behind her, the same lights, a different woman, or maybe not. Maybe this version was always inside her, just waiting for a reason to emerge. Eventually, I paid the tab and left. Walked home instead of calling a car. Every step felt like shedding skin. When I got home, the house was empty, quiet, still holding its breath. I went to bed alone, and for the first time in weeks, I slept without dreaming. I left a flash drive with every truth she buried inside the pages of her favorite book. No note, just a sentence in the margin. There's only one exit. That night, I cooked dinner like nothing had changed. The next morning, she moved through the house in silence. No tears, no apologies, just the sound of something ending. We shared the same roof, but love had already left. What remained between us was colder than anger, emptiness. Photos from the party surfaced. Laura and Owen, hand in hand. HR launched an inquiry. Her curated image crumbled fast. I didn't say a word. I left my key on the counter, packed light, and moved into a small bay apartment. Mornings became quiet, honest. Coffee, long walks, the sound of water instead of lies. She never asked me to come back, and I never needed to hear it. I had already said goodbye the moment I stopped speaking.